Hello and welcome back to the Franchise Growth Podcast. My name is Belle, Director of Marketing here at AC Inc., and I am here today with Jennifer. Jen, how's it going?
Great. Very good. How are
Yeah,
you, Belle?
I'm good. It is very cold outside, but I'm really looking forward to recording a podcast with you. So it's kind of getting me through. I'm also wearing a cozy sweater, so that's also helping. I wanted to kick off. We of course kick off all the episodes with a fun icebreaker type question, and it's tough. I've podcasted a lot with you, and I know you pretty well, but I came up with one. I'm curious if there is something on your bucket list this year. Do you have like it could be a trip, it could be just like a goal of some sort, or a thing you want to do? What's just one thing that's on the bucket list or the goal list for the year?
Very good question. And actually, my husband and I sit down and we kind of plan our year and plan our buckets and that kind of thing. One major thing for me is a few years ago, a bunch of years ago now, I started a charity and it was called Canadian Kids Give Books. And it was to recycle used books and get them to developing countries. And because I had a relationship back then with the country of Belize in Central America, and books weren't a thing, so families didn't read books. You couldn't necessarily go to a bookstore and buy books, and so I did a lot of work with them, and then long story short, something happened that I lost my contact there. Anyway, moral of my story is, so my charity kind of got paused. I have a garage full of school supplies, books, things
Wow.
that just never got, shipping costs are so expensive. And so my goal is to figure out where I'm going to send those and how I'm going to get them to. I don't want to just like give them away. I want to get them into the hands of kids that need them in developing countries, but I just need to figure it out. What's
Yeah.
what's what's my next route on
That's
that?
an amazing thing to have on a bucket list. I love that. And I did not know that about you. So the icebreaker worked. Learn
There
something.
you go.
I also love that you and your husband sit down to do that mapping out. I really enjoy doing that. We usually do it like before the new year, like kind of through the holidays and stuff. So we do a lot of driving around between families' houses over the holidays and stuff. So we'll sometimes do it even in the car, and we'll be like talking about the past year and like what was good and what we want to change. And then the next year, like what are some things on our list and stuff. I love that. I always think it's so fun.
Yeah, definitely. A
Um,
planner and an organizer, so it's right up
That's
my
us.
alley.
That's us. The husbands are brought along for the ride. Uh, okay, so we are going to just dive right into the episode today because there is actually a lot I want to touch on. So, obviously, if you're listening, you saw the title of the episode. We are talking about questions to be asking in your coaching calls, but specifically questions that help with like the vision planning, the goal setting, that kind of thinking about where we want to go that helps franchisees set those goals. So, as a field coach, whether you're a new coach or you're a really seasoned coach and you're looking for some good ideas in terms of vision setting questions and those guiding questions that can really get you a good idea of what your franchisees, what their personal goals are, right? So, of course, we've got the goals of the business growth in general, right? Wanting to make sure the business is optimized and working well. But then we want to connect it back to the goals of the franchisee themselves, which is something we've talked about a lot on the show, obviously. But we are going to actually be using, this is so fun, one of our tools that we use with our clients. So Jen and I are going to work through a couple of the questions. I'm going to ask Jen for some of her thoughts. It's like how she uses them with clients in training and as a fractional coach and all of that. But we're going to be walking through the strategic growth coaching guide, which is our big tool full of our exact strategic growth coaching process, all the resources and tools we use with our clients. So we're actually going to be going over the questions that are in that tool itself. So I'm pretty excited. Jen, you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. As a quick note, as you're listening, if you are interested in getting access to the strategic growth coaching process, the foundations of like where this tool is used and that type of thing, we do have our 101 Academy course coming up, which is the strategic growth coaching. All like it's the foundations of it. It's starting to really understand what that process looks like, and of course, that's this tool that we're going to be going over here is the base of how we built that course and all the courses that we offer at the Academy. So that is coming up, that course for registration. So do check out fieldcoachexperts.com/academy if you are interested in getting like more information on this process and using it in your own system. Okay, so let's start with how we use these questions that we're about to go over. So Jen, explain to me the like difference between the vision setting process, like how we would be creating this vision planning, when we would bring this up maybe with franchisees. Do you like dedicate a call time to go over all these like questions and kind of dig deeper? So just explain what that process looks like so we understand when we would be using these questions.
So the vision planning is actually the first step in the strategic growth coaching process. And now when you do that it depends. So if you're new to that, a lot of coaches we know, they are not necessarily following a structured process. It's kind of like sitting down with their franchisee, having a call. Hey, what's going on? Let's look at some numbers. What are your challenges? What can I help you with? And really, the strategic growth coaching process is just that. It is a structure, it's a framework that coaches can follow. So you could, if you were going to adopt this, you could sit down with your franchisee or maybe, warn them and say, look, I want to start this process with you. And we are actually going to have a call to build that foundation. And we want to, with most franchisees, not all, because if you have franchisees that are drowning, they're not profitable, they're just barely staying alive in their business, vision planning is the last thing that they want to do. They got to deal with what's in front of them, right? So
Yeah.
it's not right for all, but for the franchisees that are doing okay or doing well, it's a great exercise to do. And then you're going to build your foundation for your coaching. So as the first step, it's really going to be a call where you are being very clear to them, for me to help you and be your accountability partner
Mhm.
in this coaching relationship, I have to know what you want from your business.
Of
It's
course.
really important. It's the why. What's your why? What do you want? What are your ultimate goals for your vision? Sorry, for your business? What's your vision?
Mhm.
And so when we were doing, or when I was doing coaching on this, I found it to be, that question to be great, but also very vague,
Yeah.
because they may say, oh, I want, to get to $1 million. Okay, great. But that doesn't tell me what you want for all of the elements in your business. So what we've done is we created what we're calling like performance buckets or business buckets within your business, and things like what is your role, or what do you want your role to be, the people you have in place, the marketing that's going to be done, operationally. There's a variety of those business buckets that we break it down. And then your question, Val, is around the questions that we ask. They're different based on the bucket, because we use those to guide the franchisee so that they're really looking at their business as a whole from a vision standpoint, and they know what it's gonna look like.
Yeah.
Because if we know where we want to go, then we can design a path to get there.
Totally, totally. And that's exactly what I wanted to kind of talk about today is the categorizing of the questions. You did a great job of so some of the categories, as you said, were like the franchisee's role, the people in place, KPIs, the operations of the business, right? So all of these being kind of, and there's a whole list, right? We've got this whole list in our guidebook that we use and that we train coaches on. But in each of those, there's a list of questions that as the coach, you can then ask to get really, really clear. And as you said, more granular, like instead of saying, well, what type of, what operations do we need in place for the business, right? Like that, when I saw this list, like I have to say, it really did open my eyes into what you just said about if I'm a franchisee, I'm not going to know every single element. Like if someone goes, what do you want your business to look like? What are your business goals? I'm not going to start right in on what KPIs I want to have in place. I'm going to talk about the things that I want out of my life, right? Like I want to work a little bit less in the business. I want to be making this much more money so that I can go do things with my family or do this type of saving or pay off debt, right? Those are the things that are going to be the things that come to my mind, not so much are the right people in the right roles in my company? That's not going to be the first thing that comes to my mind. So these questions kind of guide those coaching conversations into the right places, so that you can set those goals in each of those buckets or areas or sections. So that was a great overview of kind of how we would approach it. We pick a call and start moving through some of these questions. So I'm going to touch on a couple. I'm going to actually use a couple example questions and just get you to kind of give examples of like what that could be making a franchisee start thinking about, how that would maybe be mapped out in some of the goal setting, right? Just kind of some comments on some of the examples of questions here. So one of them you already briefly mentioned, but I'll just read it off of the guidebook here. So what do you want your role to look like as the franchisee? What will you be responsible for? I like how those are kind of grouped together. And then what level of leadership involvement do you aspire to have in the business? Those are kind of three ones, and those are in the franchisee's desired role bucket. So if anyone's curious, when you ask a franchisee that question, what gears are going to start moving that might be different than just saying, what goals do you have for your business? Or what do you want out of your business? What is that going to really start getting them to think about?
Well, it really, what do they want their role to look like is such a good one,
Mhm.
because it's like a lot of times like, I don't know, I've never
Yeah.
really thought about that. Or somebody, they're like, my role is going to be, I'm sitting on a beach,
Yeah.
in Mexico, and I'm going to call in once a week and say, everything good, great, back to my margarita, right? But it's really getting them to think and we've got to figure out, part of this exercise is what is what is the timeline of their vision? Is this
Yeah.
10 years from now, 15, 25? Everybody's timeline is going to be different. And so you are just asking them, what do they see? Like, and what's important is really being a true coach here and asking those open-ended questions to get them thinking, because not everyone can come up with the answer. So you might even say, okay, what does your role look like? And they say, I don't know. Okay, well, do you, I'm going to say open-ended questions. Now I'm going to say some closed-ended questions, but at the same time, it's like, okay, are you going to work in your business full time? Or are you
Yeah.
going to work part-time? Are you going to work in it at all? Are you going to be a very absentee owner? And get them thinking like that. So you're doing some kind of follow-up questions to get them to dig deeper and to guide them into what kinds of things they should be thinking about, right? Like, how many hours a week are you going to be working? Is it going to be set days? Like, really get them thinking of what they want it to look like. And if they're not going to be working in the business, then what does that look like? How
Yeah.
are they going to be making sure their business is still running as it needs to be?
Yeah. I think that's really key. And one thing you said there that I think is interesting too is, as a coach, starting to really understand if someone's mindset immediately goes to a short-term vision for this. They go, oh, well, I'm really in it right now. I would love to maybe work a bit less. I would love to, work a few hours less. And is that what they want in 10 years? Or is that them thinking in 2 years, right? That them thinking, oh, in 2 years, it'd be great if I was, not working on Saturdays. I would love that, right? So it would be interesting if you start having conversations with franchisees and start noticing as a coach where their immediate vision goes to, right? Do they immediately start answering what they would love, next month to look like? Or do they immediately start talking about, in 20 years, I want this to be what my business looks like, and here's how much involvement I want, and here's the like. I think that would be a really interesting mindset exercise too, that you're starting to pick up on as a coach, whether you've worked with this franchisee for a while and you've just never done this exercise before, or whether you're a new coach coming in and wanting to really get to know a franchisee as well, because that, I'm sure, will help with those conversations down the road, and with maybe stretching them a little bit too, and going, that's awesome that you want that, but like, what's our realisticness of getting that, right? Maybe having them shrink the vision a little bit just to see what the steps would be, or having to have them expand the vision and look beyond the next year, right? Would be a really cool exercise as a coach, as you start asking some of these important questions.
Yeah, I think, you said something that triggered me about a new coach.
Mm,
What a great way to build rapport and trust and the relationship with a franchisee, then
Yeah,
ask them about their why and their vision and getting to know them. And because too many times franchisees think that all the coach cares about is them doing what they need to do to make as much revenue as possible for the franchisor, which is the direct opposite of what we want them to feel.
of course.
And so this exercise is so important for that, to let them know that I want to support you to reach your goals and see your vision
Yeah.
come to fruition. And it builds that relationship in
Yeah.
such a great way.
It builds it beyond having especially if you're a new coach, or if you a brand is like new to implementing field coaches as well, or new to implementing this field coaching structure or framework. It builds it so that it doesn't feel like a field coach is just a member of the home office team who's coming in to work on compliance. That's so often been the narrative in franchising in general. So to start off, as you said, with these really in-depth, like very nitty-gritty questions that focus on their vision and what they want to get out of their business, I think that would also build that relationship to be beyond just a compliance audit person who comes in and is like, here's what you need to do, which is what some franchisees may start to feel if they're like, here's his business coach, you're going to be working with them. That could maybe feel a little bit that way initially. So yeah, totally agree. I'm going to touch on a couple other questions. I'm going to go into the people bucket because there's a couple other really good questions I thought I'd mention here. So one that really stood out to me is, how do you envision the team's collaboration and dynamics? I loved that one. And I also really love the how will your team be held accountable for performance? So that gets into, and those are great open-ended because that opens up a whole conversation about the team in general, the culture, I love the dynamics and like, how is your team dynamic going to be? Because to me, I just hear so often like, how's your team culture, right? How's the energy of your team or whatever. But the dynamics and the collaboration between your team members is such a cool way to start thinking about, is it what I want now? And is there a way I would want my team dynamic to be in the future that we could like put some steps and goals in place to be working towards? I just really, really love that one. Do franchisees often, and Brecken and I have had some interesting conversations about this in other podcast episodes, about having a franchisee sometimes struggle with like, oh, I have to kind of lead this team and I have to kind of dictate some of those things. Like, it's not just going to happen. Those dynamics don't just appear, right? Having everyone really work well together, or having a positive company culture, or maybe just a very getter done culture, right? Like whatever the cultures you're wanting to build, you have to kind of dictate that. Do you feel like these questions, like what types of reactions do you sometimes get from franchisees? Is it that same, like, I haven't thought about it before? Is it like excited to be talking about it in this way? Like what kind of reaction to the people element do you often get?
A lot of that. I think business owners in general are really live in the now,
Totally.
and don't give themselves the freedom of thinking, where do I want it to be?
Mhm.
And this is something that people typically don't think about when it comes to team dynamics and the people. And it's so important to know, who do I need in place, and what is that what is that team dynamic, and how, this directly relates back to their role. If they're sitting on that beach in Mexico, how are they going to ensure that they have the team dynamics and culture that they want from their business?
Mhm.
And that doesn't happen overnight. You have to be very intentional about that, and that's bringing the right people into your business,
Yeah.
and creating the everything from the systems and the processes, and the way you are, servant leadership and all of these things that is building up that culture and that team, setting the foundation for team dynamic. That is, as long as you are working hard to bring the right people in, it will continue, and hopefully get better. Or you can at least assure, what, foundations there, I've got the right people,
Yeah.
they're all set up, I'm sitting on my beach, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm curious. So last question here, and it's just a reminder again, if you're interested in the strategic growth coaching process, the foundations of this process that we use, or if you want to reach out to us and learn more about getting access to the big guidebook and having us come in and help do some training and all of that, of course, you can just head to fieldcoachexperts.com. But what I wanted to ask as an end, because I think that this is what's coming to my mind as we start going through some of these initial questions. And I loved how you gave that, okay, we book a call to go over this. It's specifically a goal setting call. We don't do it for franchisees who are in like emergency mode. That's not going to be helpful. We do it for franchisees who have somewhat of a handle on the day-to-day of the business and are starting to want to look at from a more strategic growth focused approach to business, which is why it's called that. But what I'm hearing is potentially a franchisee getting a bit overwhelmed, or potentially even a coach going, oh my gosh, I have so many questions to be moving through. I have so many things I want to be digging into in the business. I don't think I can do this in one call. I'm not even sure if we could do it in 2 calls. Like, this is real. There's so much to be getting out of this vision, the questions element of this vision planning. What would you say if you're seeing maybe a franchisee get a bit flustered or maybe feel a bit overwhelmed in a call like this? Or if, as a newer coach, or maybe a coach who hasn't worked with this franchisee before, if you're feeling a bit flustered about how much you need to be, getting out of this franchisee to really start building this foundation, what are some tips? Do you like take a deep breath, book it into a whole bunch of small calls, not go over everything at once? What are some things maybe someone could do if there's like definitely some element of flustered or overwhelmed happening?
You know what? I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I think when you're a coach, you've got to be adaptable and you've got to see the needs of your franchisee. That's
Yeah.
first and foremost, is we've got to adapt to what their needs are. So it could be something, and it really depends on a lot of factors, but maybe it's one vision question every time you have you connect with them, you
Mhm.
have a call or something, and you take 10 minutes just to discuss that. I mean, ideally, the way our framework has been designed is that we focus on all of the buckets. And also, I will say, some people are going to be talking way more than others. And
Mhm.
even if you just get some simple answers, that's okay. It doesn't have to be a big, long, like we're going to take 10 minutes for every bucket. It could be some real basic bullet points.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because the goal is to understand their vision and get them thinking about it. Maybe it's something that as you coach them, you're coming back to and adding pieces as you're learning more. This isn't a one and done at all. So it's really, be flexible, be adaptable to the needs of your franchisee and you as well if you get a little flustered. But really, the focus of this is the step one to set goals.
Yeah.
1 year goals, quarterly goals, that kind of thing. So if you've got the time where you've already got a process in place where you're doing some of that, you could, definitely spread it out. But it's really just see what the needs are. And one thing I did want to mention, because I know we're probably winding down, Belle, is we've been talking about the user guide. But what goes along with the user guide, which is what we teach and we use in our coaching, but also we teach in the 101 course, is the toolbox. This is an actual tool that has, a template for the business buckets and vision. We also do later on down the process, we talk about, let's look at the business buckets and what's going on your business right now.
Mhm.
Let's set some 1 year goals. So we've got tools for all of the different phases that we share with our participants on our course, or if we're working with them as clients, that they can then use or use and make their own.
Yeah.
I had a system that I worked with that took it, and they have this great technology, and they took the methodology and put it into their tech. Awesome. It's
Mhm.
not you have to use this template, but for those that have nothing or have never done any coaching or have just done check-ins, it's great because not only do you get taught the information, you get the user guide, but then you also get
The
the framework
toolbox.
as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really worth mentioning for sure. Is that, yeah, we're not just going through the process in the course. You're actually going to get the templates that then you can apply. I actually think too, beyond new coaches or someone who hasn't implemented this in their system yet, optimizing your current process. If you're listening and you're a coach or an operations pro at at a system that already has coaching in place, this is definitely an opportunity. And we're always looking at this as well of like, how would we make sure that we're just using the optimal process? And this is why all the work has gone into the guidebook and the toolbox and all of that. So optimizing your own processes and identifying areas where you could be adding in more elements of the vision planning, or as you said, being more flexible and kind of using different versions of the templates for different franchisees, right? All of that. So thank you for mentioning that. That's definitely valuable if someone's thinking about the course or thinking about reaching out and getting more info. That is super helpful. We are going to wind down. That was an awesome episode. I loved going through some of the questions. I think that was really, really helpful just to hear examples. Like, how is it actually written out? How is it actually phrased? Not just what are your goals for your business, as you said, which can feel sometimes a bit daunting or sometimes a bit limiting, depending on the conversations that have happened so far, right, with a coach and franchisee.
The fun thing, one thing, Val, the fun thing
Yeah.
about the templates when it comes to the questions is our actual templates we use is they have pop-ups for the cells that give some of the questions
Awesome.
for franchisees that are like, oh, I'm stuck. I don't know. Or coaches. I'm not sure what to ask, so that you can
Have the
be
prompt
guided
all
with
set.
it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think I just love the hearing the examples or the prompt, right? I think that's just so helpful. I feel like that in marketing, in my work, and it's just so nice to see actual tangible examples of what it is that you're doing. I think that's sometimes a more helpful resource in the moment than like a guide of how to structure your questions or things like that. So I wanted to go over the actual, a couple actual examples. And definitely do, yeah, reach out if you're interested in taking the course or learning from Jen or our team on any of these structure or framework questions. And Jen, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. That was so fun.
Sure, as always.
All right, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your week and go be awesome.